Welcome to the Nurses Out Loud radio show. We will be starting in a few moments, so please stay tuned. If you are watching on social media, please give us a like, share, and follow. And for those of you who would like some more info, please go check us out at nursesoutloud.com. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Nurses Out Loud. I'm your host, Susie Eichinger. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a registered nurse with 38 years at the bedside, an expert witness on nursing standard of care, and the founder of Nursing Care Consultants. I help families and patients navigate the healthcare system from hospital to home. On my show, we've pulled back the curtain on the dangerous gaps between the nursing standard of care and the broken hospital system that prevents us from delivering it. Today, we're diving back into one of the most persistent and infuriating examples of that breakdown, and that's the relentless, unscientific, and coercive push for flu vaccines and the mask mandates that accompany them. It's a policy born not out of science, but of corporate coercion, and it's still happening today. I'm not alone today. I'm thrilled to be joined by Jody O'Malley and Nurse Nicole, fellow brilliant nurses. Jody attended a staff meeting last week, and they're rolling out the same old mask mandate playbook. Same script, different day. Discover more about my show and catch the latest podcast by visiting americaoutloud.news. Just head to the menu and check out talk shows or talk radio schedule and stay updated. Also, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter at nursesoutloud.com. We love to engage with our audience, and we're so happy to be able to provide the most up-to-date information to help you improve your life and make informed decisions about your health. So today, Jody and Nicole and I are going to dissect this madness. We're going to talk about why these policies are a clinical farce, how they harm patients, and they punish good nurses. This isn't just a piece of cloth or a shot. It's about a system that values control over critical thinking. So I'm going to bring my pals on here. So you have to show yourself.
Hello.
Hey. I want to get to your stories here in a second. I'm going to real briefly tell the story of what happened to me in late 2023 and early 2024. I was working at a hospital. They came through with the email that said, it's time to start wearing your mask if you haven't had the flu shot. And I just didn't. I acted like I didn't hear them. And I kept working. And the days went by and the weeks went by, and they kept kind of looking at me like, are you going to wear it? There was a couple other people besides me that weren't wearing it. And I just kept working. And I said, well, I'm not going to worry about it until there's a problem. And then one day, my manager and the two assistant nurse managers or charge nurses kind of disappeared one afternoon. And I knew that they had gone into a meeting and that they were going to come and get me. So they came and got me. And they took me into the office and they said, you need to wear the mask. And I said, I'm not wearing the mask. And they said, well, why not? And I told them why. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And I said, I'm not going to wear it. And they said, well, then you're going to be suspended until further notice. And we'll talk about it later, which was going to end up being a Mexican standoff, basically, a game of chicken, who was going to budge first. I did not wear the mask. They wanted to accommodate me by putting me in an office and having me do chart audits for the rest of the flu season. And I told them that was going to take me away from the bedside and that wasn't appropriate and I wasn't going to do it. So I had a big meeting with the VP of HR, who actually put her hand over her badge and said, I agree with you, but I can't do anything about it. We'll talk a little bit more about that later too, about why they keep doing this. And she was very kind, but she was stuck, and I get it. And I talked about the reasons that I wouldn't do it. And I resigned. I said, I'm not going to be, if this is the accommodation, I can see how that's going to go. You're not going to terminate me. I won't stay under these circumstances. So I did resign. And then very soon thereafter, that entire organization collapsed. That was the Steward healthcare system. And they were already in big trouble and couldn't keep the heat on or keep the doctors with any of their, they had a credit hold with Stryker and Medtronic, and it was pretty ugly that was going on with them. So anyway, that's what happened with me back in 2024. And Jody, when you told me the other day that you had a staff meeting and they mentioned it, I just was like, wow, here we go again, right? Here comes flu season. So tell me about what happened.
Well, let's go back to 2022 when I interviewed with this company. I asked them, what's your vaccine policy? And they said, well, we don't require it here. You can file, you could just sign a declination form. Perfect. What's your mask policy? We don't have one. Perfect. Oh. So for 2 seasons, 23 and 24, we didn't have a mask policy. And here's the thing. I didn't know, did you get your flu shot? Did you not? I didn't know any of that. But I will tell you that 100% of us did not wear a mask. 100% of us didn't wear a mask. And I said to people that when given the choice, nurses and doctors will not wear a mask, the vast majority, because they do not work. They are way too cumbersome, and they do not stop a flu virus or a coronavirus. And just leave it at that. So now that we got a new CNO and a new nurse manager, I know she's very liberal leaning. I had heard that there was an exchange with the Charlie Kirk assassination, and she had said some things which prompted the CNO to send an email to say, do not talk about any of this at the nurses station, period. Okay. So it's not a surprise to me that she is maybe the one who thinks she can enforce this. So basically it's where we stand. I'll sign my declination form and I'll see if I still have a job on November 1st. I'm going to send the study on the Cleveland Clinic, which we'll get into. I am going to send some information on masks. I am going to keep it respectful and science-based and see what happens. Yeah.
Exactly. Nicole, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Here's the thing. For years and years, I've religiously exempted. Just a kind of correlation between myself getting the flu vaccine and then maybe within a couple weeks getting really sick. My asthma would get flared up, and they always tell you it doesn't cause that, and there's no way that happens. And I just, personal experience, it happened to me every time. I have the records to show it. And so I stopped and I would religiously exempt. And it was never a problem, but they did require to wear the mask. And so being someone who worked, at the bedside, I would, if I wore it, because depending on where I worked, I had transplant patients at one point, I would just hang it from my ear. But, I really wouldn't wear it. It was really hard for the patients to hear. They couldn't read my lips. Everything's all kinds of chaotic all the time. And the patient population we care for, it's really cumbersome for them to interact with people that wear these masks, especially if you have an accent. And really, it was a way to identify that we weren't compliant. And so it really stressed me out in that aspect. And you had to have a different sticker and people could identify you as your scarlet letter. But then when the pandemic hit, and they couldn't come for us for COVID in the state of Florida because we had some law changes, they really have doubled down on the flu vaccine. And now there's different policies in place and they're really harping on it. And, with the efficacy being so low, it really frustrates me that they're putting such an emphasis on this product that's absolute trash. And I just recently had somebody reach out to me through the Nurses Out Loud forum that said, that her child is in medical school, and even though California offers a medical exemption, they're refusing it. And there's a lot of things that go into that we don't have to go into, but basically just saying, like, what do they do? Not only are they refusing the medical exemption, they're saying it has to be the 2025 flu vaccine. They will not take anything else, which I find interesting. And once it was brought to the dean, they basically said that 280 individuals in various programs wanted to refuse it and get the medical exemption, and they're denying that to them. So either you get it or you lose your spot in school. And so I just think it's sad. We have such a shortage in our healthcare field, and you have really good people that just want to
We
live
have a
and go to
shortage
school.
of those people. We have a shortage of those
Exactly.
people too.
So like you said, it's just, it's so frustrating. So for me, no is a complete sentence. I don't want it. I continue to not want it. So I have to fill out a very specific religious exemption, or I could lose my benefit discount is what it is this year. 2 years ago, I would lose my job, same job that I'm at. 2 years fast forward, now they're coming after our discount for benefits if I don't. So it's disgusting. It's coercion.
It's so disgusting.
Yeah, so
it is so disgusting.
In the great free state of
either,
Florida.
It's
Right,
like either way they're going to get paid. Either way they're going to get paid for this shot. That's what that tells you. That's such BS.
Yep. It's coercion. It's, these, the interesting thing about when I did my research was what I found in the agency directives was nothing for unvaccinated employees or unvaccinated healthcare workers as far as wearing a mask. There was nothing in there. The only thing it had was conducting sterile procedures, working in sterile areas, caring for the immunosuppressed, and those with droplet and aerosol precautions. There was nothing. These are corporate policies. They're not standards of care, right? And my gripe with the mask, and I got to spell it out for the dimwit administrators that can't understand this. A, they're a health hazard to me, oxygen depletion, carbon dioxide, inhalants. They harm the patient, just like you said, Nicole. They dehumanize the patient experience. They block nonverbal cues. I cannot educate with a mask on. There's loss of therapeutic communication, facial expressions. I can't do it. Okay, so the next thing is the infection control nightmare that comes with these vectors. I mean, the hand to mask business where everybody's touching the mask and then touching everything in their environment and down around, you guys know, it's just an infection control nightmare. It's a vector. Then the other thing about it that I really like, because this actually speaks to the fact that the facilities do not want to do what is right. They want to do what is coercive. And that is that it creates a false sense of security. These masks, you get these people in here that have an upper respiratory infection, say, oh, toss your mask on. It's going to be a good day. We need to screen these employees for upper respiratory infection and tell them not to come to work. And we need to have a robust hand hygiene program. And, the hand hygiene program has kind of fallen off, right? We do the best that we can individually, but we really need to be checking each other, right? Mm-hmm. The other, it's not evidence-based. The CDC, the state health departments, there's nothing there. And then, of course, what we've talked about is the punitive design. Then it's all to coerce us to get the shot. It's to coerce us to get a shot and to put the scarlet letter on us that we haven't. I mean, how else would you know? Like you said, Jody, how else would you know that somebody didn't get the shot unless they're wearing the mask, right?
Well, I say there's three things. Either one, it shows that you're scared, right? Two, an idiot because you don't know that doesn't work. Or three, you're unvaccinated and it tells your medical status. Like all of those are wrong. And I don't say idiot lightly, but and maybe that might not be the best, kindest word, but let me tell you what was my number one thing during this pandemic was the mask. I could not stand it on kids. I could not stand seeing people wear it. And I know way too much about this discipline, which is actually the industrial hygienists that run these respirator mask programs, to know the difference, right? Like it's been 5 years since we were coerced to do it for COVID. Nurses, we have an moral and an ethical obligation to research these things that we are asking people to implement. We need to know. And if you do a little bit of research, you will know that they are ineffective. And what is effective is circulation destruction technology and ventilation. All they needed to do was open up their their flutes in the air conditioner
ventilation
unit a little
system.
bit and help ventilate, right?
It's
There's
Florence Nightingale,
technology.
man. Open a window.
Yes, girl. Turn on it for yes. Yes. So and this technology is really inexpensive. So if they really cared about our health and safety, people would have implemented this, and it's super cheap to do. So yeah.
So tell me about that super cheap thing to do. I'm curious about that. I never heard it before.
So there is something called the hierarchy of controls. And this is what the industrial hygienists work with. Okay. So if you can't eliminate the pathogen, then you have to start going down. Okay. And one of them is circulation. We can't open up the hospital windows, right? We can't do that. Can we destroy it? Yes. There's technology out there to destroy it. There's these blue light therapies. There's stuff that they can put in the HVAC system and destroy it. You know, these viruses, you
Yeah,
know,
we know it wasn't about destroying it. It was about control, right?
well, and
Yeah.
it is. It's just like
It wasn't
Nicole
about
losing her
destroying it.
discount because she's not vaccinated when, you know, the Cleveland Clinic came out with a study that said out of 38,000 workers, that there was only 2% that even got the flu, okay, in total. And out of those 38,000, the ones who took the vaccine, they had a negative efficacy. So 30% of them got the flu when only 2% overall got it. You know what I'm saying? So it's just this is their cash cow, and we know this. They do it every single year. You know what I mean? And they know that, you know, if they coerce the healthcare population, that they're going to make some money off of their flu shots.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, that's a question that I asked was like, how do they get away with this, considering that there's no agency directives, right? So the way that they get away with it is that the health agencies set these minimum standards, right? But the hospitals can hide behind the claim that they're allowed to be stricter. They can be more strict than the policy. It's irrational and it's completely detached from evidence. But they can say, oh, we're just, you know, it's an abundance of caution. They can do whatever they want, right? So we know that it's coercion and not care, and the sole purpose is punishment. And so that's to make our lives as inconvenient as possible. It's a business decision. And then the virtue signaling theater, right? Since COVID, masking is now a cheap PR method, right? So it's a way for the administration to say, oh, look how much we care, or, you know, the public sees us as really, really advocating for their health because, you know, people really actually believe that these masks do anything. So especially the people who do think that they do something, then the hospitals they really care about them, and the healthcare agencies really care about them. The other thing that I think is really interesting is what the response was of that VP. That policy machine, once it's up and running, you can't get that to stop, right? Like nobody's gonna have the courage to go to whoever it takes to go over and above that entire organization and say, we need to relook at this policy. Like, this mask mandate is not covered by any kind of agency directive. The comfort of the administration is prioritized over the safety of the patient. You know, so these, in short, they're legally allowed to make stupid laws and rules for us, right? They face no consequences for implementing these policies that lack any evidence. You know, they have a liability shield, it's a coercion tool, and it's a cheap PR stunt.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Submit to it because these entities are saying that there's a workaround. And I do remember when I was looking at the California law, it's like an how do I say this, undue burden. There's undue
Mm-hmm.
burden where they can refuse and say that it's a hardship and essentially say like, it doesn't matter that there's an exemption. If they feel like that the risk versus benefit is what it is, that you don't have the right. And I'm reading this going, this is insane that we have this. And that people are being told that, you know, you can take it to court, but you're not going to win because they can say, and I'm like, where do we draw the line?
Mm-hmm.
How does that make sense? And so I don't know if that's something that you guys have also heard. And that's part of the reason why people are succumbing to this and going along with it. And that person who reached out to me, the dean of the school said, even though this person had a previous vaccine injury, all you need to do is just take it. If you're down for a couple of days, you'll get over it. And then you can proceed with the program as usual.
Oh my gosh.
Literally, my heart just
Wow.
broke. And I was like,
Yes.
all right. And this is what's happening. They're getting away with it. Where's the protections? How do we protect each other and these other individuals that want a choice?
Mm-hmm. Right. Because we're not even talking about something that actually works, you know,
Right,
and
right.
in that same letter that said, you know, the flu shots are available, you can sign a declination form, but if you do, you got to wear a mask starting November 1st. How about like, hey guys, we're preparing for flu season. You know, maybe let's increase your vitamin C, lower your processed foods, get some sunshine, make sure you have a good work-life balance. If you are sick, stay home. If you're
Exactly.
sick, stay home. And what does that mean? Like if you are symptomatic and you cannot control it, you know, like if I'm coughing all the time, well, if I can take a cough suppressant, right? Tylenol or codeine cough syrup works freaking amazing. Tesla pearls, I don't know so much. And that's my
Some
opinion,
people.
right?
It works on some
But
people.
if you or Robitussin or whatever you take, but if you can control your symptoms, then you are not putting that out there, right? I mean, you're not coughing on people. How about dilute povidone iodine? Oh my God. That's the number one product that I love. I used to make my own back in 2020. Now we have Immune Mist. You know, it's a couple squirts up your nose. You know, it's like I was listening to the CDC, Susan Monterez get testify, and Rand Paul or someone said to her, does the shot stop the virus? And he said, well, she goes, it lowers the viral load. And it's like, well, how about we destroy the viral load in your nose and mouth with some dilute povidone iodine or some hypertonic saline? Right. I mean, that's the thing to me. It's like, why are we not doing things like you said, Susie, that has some science behind it? But
Right.
I just keep thinking, follow the money. Where are they getting money to get people to take these flu shots? I mean, there has to be some kind of kickback here, you know?
Well, pharma, you know, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
pharma, you know, back in the 1990s, they called it meds and eds. And that was when pharma built a bunch of medical schools and a bunch of healthcare institutions. And they sponsored the medical schools and the algorithmic medicine that these people learned over the next 20 years, 30 years. And then they built all these great big towers, these big, huge medical centers. And people like me started making $100,000 a year because that was all coming through from pharma, because that pharmacy was the thing that was paying the bill to the nurses. And they started paying us like crazy. And then the whole system turned and everybody wanted to become a nurse. So we got this influx of people who really didn't want to be nurses. They wanted to have a decent living. So now we have that. But this whole meds and eds thing that came through, that was how the pharma started. That's how it all started becoming the medical industrial complex that was controlled by pharma. So I'm not at all surprised that they want us to take the flu shot, because that's going to give them the money that they want. I was looking kind of off subject right now, but I was looking at this guy talking about statins the other day, and it was like so obvious. He said, if statins worked, why hasn't heart disease gone down? I'm like,
Right.
the what? Like, you're right. But dementia went through the roof, right? So,
Yep.
everybody's on a statin and everybody's in long-term care and a memory care facility, but
Right.
goodness gracious. But back to the subject. Yes, I think it's definitely largely based in coercion and getting the flu shot into people's arms.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, we also have the spiritual battle, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this is more than a policy fight, right? It's a fight against
Yes.
the entities that seek to enslave us and keep us
Yes.
fearful and sick and compliant,
Yes, I would love to talk about that when we come back from break. 100%.
Okay, I think it's a great idea. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was gonna ask you guys both to discuss the culture of fear and retaliation that silences nurses who speak up against these policies, because this is really fighting against those that are really the watchmen for the patient, for people, for human beings who are sick, who are vulnerable, and they're fighting against us. They would be fine to have automatons at the bedside that just do the work and then try to put in other things in order to mitigate any kind of problems. The last show I did was on falls and the zero tolerance, for no falls. You just can't have no falls in reality. You're always going to have falls, and you can't look at it that way. But this, culture of not tolerating anything, but when you do see it, pushing it off on the nurse. There we have again coercion. Who wants to stay in that? So I think this is a good time for us to go to a break. Okay, I think so. Let's see. We're going to come back and we're going to talk further about the coercion of the flu shot and the mask mandate and some of the tools to combat this insanity. Both our wonderful nurse whistleblowers here are going to talk about their own experience with retaliation. Don't forget to check out the online store at americaoutloud.shop. You can find all the products that we represent on our network at a discounted rate, and that's including a line of products from Chemical Free Body. Unlike the majority of supplements you'll find on the market today, Chemical Free Body doesn't have harmful ingredients, binders, fillers, or flow agents. So you can use the promo code OUTLOUD to save 20% off the Healthy Gut Bundle. So see you on the other side of the break, and stay with us.
If you are a nurse that is fed up with the sick care model, I have a solution for you. My name is Melissa Schreitfetter, and I am the owner and founder of the Functional Nurse Academy. FNA is the most comprehensive functional medicine training program on the market, specifically tailored to nurses. It is self-paced and equips LPNs, RNs, and nurse practitioners to practice functional medicine, address the root causes of dysfunction, and start their independent functional medicine practices. At FNA, you will learn how to order labs, functional health reports, create customized wellness plans, package and price your services, and even how to market your brand effectively. Graduates earn 90 nursing CEUs, and then they qualify for multiple board certification titles. They also will have access to our exclusive tools, such as our Functional Nurse Toolkit, our social media and marketing kit. And I don't want to just train you and send you on your way. So you also will get access to me each month via the Functional Nurse Academy monthly mentorship program, where you will be able to attend a live class with me each month. So say goodbye to sick care and start your dream career as a functional medicine nurse. Enroll today at functionalnurseacademy.com.
Welcome back to Nurses Out Loud. I'm your host, Susie Eichinger, and today Jody and Nurse Nicole are with me. We're talking about the flu shot and mask mandate coercion in healthcare facilities. And now we're going to talk about the why and how you can push back against this nonsense. So when we went to the break, we were talking about the whistleblower's perspective on this. I'm interested in what y'all have to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I can start. During COVID, I actually researched very deeply mask And because as nurses, we were never, coerced to wear them, for, unless your patient was positive, right? If you had a positive flu patient and they were symptomatic, then it was droplet precautions. When I researched the size of a coronavirus, it was 0.1 microns. Well, what is the flu size? 0.2. Okay. So it's bigger than a coronavirus. Well, what is TB? TB is 0.3 microns. Okay. And we know when we have a patient that has TB, we put them in a negative pressure room so that so it's a negative pressure. It's not going out throughout the hospital. And then we put on an N95. Well, an N95 mask says that it filters 0.3 microns with 95% efficacy when not touched, when only worn for 15 minutes because your aerosols break down, the degradation of the mask, and you only wear it one time and you throw it away in the room because it's an infection control hazard. You don't bring it outside the room. So why did they want everybody to wear a mask? I mean, even Fauci and the Surgeon General was like, stop buying masks, people. It doesn't stop a coronavirus. I detail that in my book. I even have the Facebook post that I did and their tweet and all of that. Then all of a sudden it comes out that it's like, no, wear one, wear two, sew your own with your underwear. It doesn't matter. Just cover your face. That's when I knew that was spiritual, that the enemy is the author of confusion, of anxiety, of fear. And that's exactly what that mask represents to me. Okay.
Yep.
Like you said, there is a time and a place. And we've already talked about, yes, we wear them in the OR because we don't want droplets to go into wounds. We get that. But to wear them out all the time is totally a symbol. That's why I pulled my kid out of school in 2020. I was like, I will not have you wearing a mask over your face. That you are not going to get used to seeing your peers. And like you said, detach yourself from the human behind the mask. So to me, 100%, it's moronic. It's against all known science. Check out Stephen Petty podcast on Rumble. He is the foremost expert on this subject. Kristen, Megan, Tammy Clark. We actually did, and I bring this up. This is part of my ethics course, okay? Because I'm so passionate about it. We did a multidisciplinary support summit that back in Michigan in 22, where all of the disciplines came together. We had a neurologist, a neurosurgeon, pediatrician, myself representing nursing, and then several others. There was like 10 of us that did this summit. It was a 6-hour summit. And we showed people how we should work, in a multidisciplinary approach. And so this is very important to me. And just letting people know, like, they only stop you from maybe getting wet, right? They tried to confuse us saying that coronavirus was transmitted on a droplet. Yes, it can be, but it's so small that it stays aerosolized. So I have to get off here pretty soon, but I want to leave you guys with this. If you can open your windows, keep them open. Put a fan in your house. Get some destruction technology, okay? And most of all, up your vitamins, okay? Up your vitamins.
Get some sunshine.
Get some sunshine. Lower your stress response. That is the directive that should be going out to every single nurse when they say that the flu vaccine is offered. And also too, Susie, the Cleveland Clinic flu study. We already know that came out, and the 2024-2025 flu season made people on average 30% sicker by taking the flu shot. So nurses, do your job, okay, and research, and we have to step up. I get it. During COVID, like Nicole said, like it was under my chin. I always had a drink in my hand. I hated the damn thing. And this year I have to walk away. I'm not going to put a mask on if they try to coerce me. I won't. And God knows how passionate I am about it. And I think we all have our hills that we will die on, and
Right.
basically this is mine. So yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing this show. It's so important.
Sure.
We have got to blast this out, guys. We have got to blast this out because there's so many of us in this profession. There's 5 million of us, and we know better. And now is the time. If anything has come up from these last couple of weeks in the world, it is courage, and it is people saying, like Nicole loves to say, hold the line. We're done. We're done.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Find out
God
who's
bless
in your
you.
corner and stick together. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jody. Thanks for coming on.
Yes.
Okay, Nicole, it's me and you. So I want to talk. Talk to me a little bit about your experience with the principalities of retaliation.
So I've been a nurse 20 years, and probably for a little over 10 years, I was always religiously exempting myself from the flu vaccine. And, my thought process is it's just a form of control. When we're talking about getting the vaccine, putting a mask on people, history usually says that we don't mask healthy people. And, it's not appropriate because of just the things that you guys just explained. There's really no evidence to prove that this is beneficial for healthy individuals. We don't teach preventative. We don't talk about, the nasal rinses or, lavages in the mouth and everything, and how to really protect yourself, throughout the year. It's just mask up and get a flu vaccine. And I feel like it's just a form of coercion, because at this point, when you look at the efficacy overall, it's very low. And then when you add a mask and people not knowing how to wear them, and like you said, touching your face and introducing all of these bacterial and viral, increased risk, it just makes no sense. It makes things even worse. And so for me, I've always had to follow when it comes to what they need you to do at the hospital in order to keep your job. And so some of that was either get an exemption, wear the mask, or get the actual flu vaccine. Well, I've told them time and time again, I'm not getting the flu vaccine. No is a complete sentence. We should be able to decline. And then with that comes, well, you need to file an exemption. But then the exemption can be a very poking and prodding process. They really want you to divulge why your religion allows you to decline and explain very thoroughly, and then go to a third party group somewhere affiliated with the hospital that they get to sit down and subjectively decide if your religious reasons are worthy or not in order to exempt, which I think is absolutely insane.
So tell me a little bit about that. I didn't know that. It goes to a third party?
Meaning there is another group that's usually affiliated with the hospital. I've heard some are third parties. I've heard some are actual committees that are put together during this time. And they sit and they basically are reviewing the exemptions. And during COVID, this is when it really exploded, because prior to this in Florida, I can speak to, we could religiously exempt and it was not a big deal. There was nothing crazy you had to do except just fill out the exemption and or refuse, decline. But since the pandemic, there's been stipulations with it. Oh, if you don't do this, you could lose your job. Oh, if you don't do this, you could lose your benefits. Or, you could be subject to losing the hierarchy of where you are in the company, and just basically another form of coercion to get you to comply. And so this group would sit and basically dictate what was written in these exemptions. And there were times,
I wonder how many pastors were on the panel.
Well, and if they were even medical, if they were even in the
Right.
medical, we were never allowed to know. And so it's just wild to me that someone can tell another human being what their rights are and if their religion allows that. And so, I heard during the pandemic, we had people that said if you put fetal aborted cells was a reason, immediately disqualified, you were not going to have that exemption accepted. We had some that had gone through the process 4 or 5 times, was constantly rejected because of their wording, the verbiage. I had been accepted
So
right away.
illegal.
It's right. And so, but nobody pushed back, because at that point, people were being furloughed, they were being laid off. And so I basically said, like I mentioned earlier, when you have such a high shortage of nurses, And then you're putting an extra barrier in place and then wondering, why does this keep happening that we're so short? And you're literally strong arming people to do something that they don't want to do. Is just absolutely mind blowing that in a compassionate and empathetic and understanding type of profession that we allow these behaviors, and then to double down and say that it actually works when we know it doesn't for evidence-based literature, and then to also single us out by wearing something different or making us put on the mask so that people know that we're different, to me is a form of discrimination. And so it's just all of these things that we're bringing up, and the higher ups just sit there, who, by the way, typically don't have to wear the mask because they're not in patient care areas and or don't have to have the same set of rules, which I find completely totalitarian. But, you know, to answer your question, it's literally consistently standing up for what you believe in, holding down, holding the line, as I say, and making sure that they understand that we have rights. Right. And there are ways that we can still coexist in the healthcare field and take exceptional care of you that does not change whether I have a flu vaccine or not, or a freaking mask on. And the same thing applied during the pandemic with COVID. Nobody asked me, for the most part, what my status was. Nobody cared. What they cared about was people that were genuinely willing to care for you and show up. So I think it's just something that coercion, money, all the things that they know they have an upper hand in this. And it's really unfortunate because we have a lot of people, like Jody just mentioned, who have been nurses a long time that you want in your corner, who are going to resign and step down because of these nuances and these barriers that they're putting in place purposefully, just like you said, so they can look good and make people, you know, on CMS guidelines appropriate for insurance reimbursement and all this other stuff they're doing. It has nothing to do with patient care. Like you said, it's a false sense of security because we all know you could vaccinate everyone and put a mask on everyone and it's not going to change the outcome.
Right. And the mask itself is going to cause people to move the virus around more by touching their face and touching everything in their environment and coming in sick and putting a mask on just because they're, you know, this is what they tell us to do. Get your butt into work because we're short already and you're sick. You know, it's interesting to me. I don't know the answer yet. Maybe one day I'll know, but this, the principalities, you know, the forces of darkness that are working on this, the thing that does not make sense to anybody that has a heart and has a heart for patients and has a heart for their fellow man, is to try to make sense of how these people continue to do things that make the nursing shortage worse, make care worse, make the people who stay more, the ones who are dedicated and have strong ethics are burnt out and have moral injury, of course. And then those who stay because they have the golden handcuffs, because they can't leave, they got a mortgage, they got a car payment, they've got kids in daycare, they've got things that they've got to take care of. And so they're stuck and they're not happy to be there. So care ends up taking a hit, of course, as we see. And the powers that be don't care. And the powers that be don't care because it's designed that way. I'm very excited, though, given what I've seen in the last couple of weeks with Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA and Turning Point Faith, and also what I see in you young nurses, that there is a turn that's going to happen, but it's going to happen within nursing. It's going to happen in a collective. I don't want nurses to go back to making $35,000 a year. I don't want that. But I tell you right now, if you started snatching some of these salaries down, you would get it really, really boiled down to who wants to really be there and who doesn't. And I don't know how else I don't want that, but I don't know how else you can sift out and find the nurses who collectively want to bring this together. I don't know if I ever told you the story of, did I ever tell you about the IV story, the IV catheter story?
Oh,
I was working. Yeah, well, they decided they were going to change the IV catheters on us. And we collectively took them all from it was a 9-floor hospital. We took all of the IV catheters out of the supply room, put them in paper bags, and took them to the director of nurse's office and said, we don't want these. You didn't talk to us about this. You changed these out. We're not used to these. We never got any in-services on them. We want our old ones back. You can have them. and we put them all into her office, and they had no choice but to go along with what we said because it was a collective. It was incredibly collective. Now, part of that was because we had a very strong union.
Right.
We had a very strong union.
Which we don't have much in Florida.
No. And you know what?
No.
Honestly, the California Nurse Association doesn't engender a lot of confidence for me when I was working there. I had a real hard time with their politics. They actually went against two propositions back in the 1990s. One of them was parental notification for a 12-year-old having an abortion. And they actually actively lobbied against that, which is completely an antithesis to community nursing. Like a 12-year-old who's pregnant is being raped. So we need to take care of that. So the nurses should have stood on that, and the Nurses Association should have stood on that. And after that, I lost all confidence in them. But we did have a collective voice, and we were very powerful.
Well, and I think that's really important too, because I don't want to, because I know in a minute I have to go off as well, but it's essentially knowing that your presence is powerful, and people need to feel emboldened to use their voice, to stand up. And when you do that, you will typically have others that will follow because they don't feel alone. They don't feel as scared. They don't feel as, singled out. And sometimes it doesn't happen right away. As we saw during the pandemic, we felt like we were like the minority, and it was scary, and we were put in situations that we were losing everything. But at the end of the day, when God calls, we answer. And we want people to see that this is a profession that must be held to ethics and morals and being able to have discourse professionally. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say you don't want to do something, or if it doesn't look right, when you see something, you say something. Right. People are so afraid to do that now and put themselves in these situations. And I'm like, where have you lost your way where staying silent? I mean, in our profession, staying silent can kill someone.
Yes.
It's so important that people understand, like, that's not an understatement.
No.
You don't speak up, someone could die. And, it's just a mask, it's just a flu vaccine. But you don't know that. How do you know that this could not cause other issues? You put the mask on, you tell a patient something, they nod their head, and really they didn't understand. And now you do something and you've caused harm. I mean, it could be as simple as that.
Yes.
Or you give you give the flu vaccine, and then they end up having some sort of issue that, maybe they didn't understand or whatever. So it's like, nothing is too small in this profession, and why it's so important that this topic is being brought up. And I really thank you for letting us be on here to do that.
Thank you for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. And I've enjoyed talking to you, and it's nice to see you. Okay. Bye-bye. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking around. What Nicole was talking about was real interesting as far as standing up. I think one of the things that's I heard one time is so interesting. It's not the first person who stands up. Let's say there's a situation where somebody's going to be dancing, and they get up and they dance alone because they hear a song that moves them, right? So they dance alone. That person who got up and danced alone, or that person who was the first person to stand up against something like a mask mandate, that person is not the one with the most courage. The most courage is the next person that gets up and dances next to them, and the next person that gets up and stands next to the first person who said no to the vaccine or no to the mandate, the mask mandate. This collective feeling, it's impossible to overemphasize how important it is and how good it feels to be standing next to someone else when you are standing for something that's ethically something that you really hold strongly in your heart and in your spirit. That multiplies. The first person to stand up, the second person that comes in will then everyone comes in behind, because that's when the dam breaks and people will come in mass. And I really believe that is very important for how we're going to stand up against all these things that are happening in the medical industrial complex and in healthcare, where we're being asked to do things that are against our values and our morals, and we're stuck. Some of us are stuck in financially stuck, afraid. So I think some of the things, the solutions that we have, what can nurses do? Okay, so I did a show before about quiet resistance and being non-compliant in more of a quiet way. And so the first thing is that you need to arm yourself with the actual agency directives. That's the CDC. That's going, or the in Florida, it was the Florida Department of Health. It was the Agency for Healthcare Administration. You need to arm yourself with these agency directives and refute the corporate policy. So bring the standard with you when you're going to have these conversations. The next thing is to document everything. And so that means poor staffing and dangerous assignments. This goes back to other shows that I've had. Dangerous assignments, fill out assignment despite objection forms. An inability to perform within the standard of care due to staffing or supply shortages. And then if anyone complains to you about the masks affecting their ability to understand you, or you feel as though your ability to communicate with the patient or resident is affected by having to wear this mask, you need to document this, specifically stating that the mask thwarted your abilities to understand the patient or to communicate with the patient. Document it, especially those who have hearing impairment or people with cognitive decline. Now, people that have mild cognitive impairment are going to struggle at times to understand you. They need to see your whole face, and they usually are elderly, and they have some hearing impairment, and they do read lips. So it's very important. The other thing is what we just talked about with the collective voice. We need to talk to our colleagues. During COVID, I found there was a lot of quiet chatter. It wasn't a place where people were speaking openly about their thoughts and feelings and their ethical obligations or their sense of having to compromise them. So I say, talk to your colleagues, find out who's in your corner, and stick together. Understand that you're not alone in the madness. And the next thing is to reframe the argument. Do not get stuck on the religious exemption debate, okay? You need to pivot to the scientific and clinical argument. All right, this policy is unsound, it harms patients, and I cannot ethically participate with it or in it, okay? So this is a fight for the soul of nursing, the safety of our patients. We must refuse to participate in these rituals that prioritize liability and theater over healing. So nurses and ancillary staff, stay strong, support each other, and continue to speak out against this. There's a couple of books I want to recommend, and in the end, I'm going to read my letter that of resignation to the hospital. Nurse Ashley Grogg wrote a book. It's called Resuscitating Nursing, and the subtitle is A Tactical Roadmap for Nurses Who Refuse to be Silenced. Ashley has done the vital work of creating a field manual for exactly what we're talking about. Her book isn't just about the problems, it's a call to action and a step-by-step roadmap for nurses who are ready to lead a professional revival. Also, Jody O'Malley has a wonderful book called Rare Courage, Standing for What's Right When You're Surrounded by Wrong. And you can get a free copy of her book by going to righteousrn.com. Now I'm going to read the resignation letter that I sent to the hospital that I worked in the steward system. before they went bankrupt and collapsed, to my manager. I am resigning from my position from the ACC effective today. I have enjoyed working with you and being part of the team that you have so skillfully built. Caring for patients has been very fulfilling and my greatest joy. On January 10th, I was removed from the bedside for refusing to wear a face mask after I declined the flu vaccination. It is my position that the corporate face covering policy has fundamental flaws and it is detrimental to my health and the care of my patients. I refuse to inhale particulate matter, rebreathe oral bacteria, and be depleted of oxygen and toxic of carbon dioxide for any period of time. I advocate for my patients who would be denied the therapeutic effect of my facial expressions and the advantages of lip reading during care delivery and crucial education periods. Additionally, as the mask itself is a route of transmission, I refuse to put my patients at risk due to the chronic hand contamination that accompanies mask usage. The antiquated face mask policy is not based in standards of care per the CDC, the Florida Department of Health, or the Agency for Healthcare Administration. Agency directives for face coverings are definite and indisputable: conducting sterile procedures, working in sterile areas, caring for the immunosuppressed, or those on droplet or aerosol precautions. There are no recommendations for face coverings of unvaccinated healthcare personnel in any area agency communications. It is illogical for the organization to cling to an outdated policy that has no basis in law or standard of care. Unfortunately, this desperate reliance is also a false security, and it distracts from the common sense measures such as robust hand hygiene and employee screening for upper respiratory infection. Additionally, it is my opinion that the flu shot face mask policy, instituted industry-wide in the mid-2000s, was designed to manipulate and coerce, resulting in convincing some to take the injection against their better judgment. Given that the policy is not based in infection control standards or agency recommendations, it suggests that enforcement is punishment for not accepting the vaccination. Now, as a side note, before I continue, this organization, Steward Health, and this hospital that I was working in, Rockledge Regional Medical Center, was falling down around us. It was an old building that was broken down and we had no heat. And they were on credit holds with multiple device companies and weren't able to get the job done. So I went on to say Rockledge Regional Medical Center is struggling to pay their bills and keep the heat on, often at the expense of hardworking staff. I and my coworkers have reluctantly resorted to wearing winter coats in patient care areas. We have no recourse as the temperatures dip to 58 to 60 degrees. This is obviously an infection control problem. Patients and visitors suffer from constant bone-chilling cold in waiting areas and holding rooms. And then surgical procedures have been canceled or postponed due to the inability to maintain humidity levels. Surgeons cannot procure needed supplies due to credit holds with medical device organizations. So the company nitpicks top-tier employees like myself to adhere to draconian policies while the day-to-day functions fall into disarray. The request from HR that I complete another religious exemption for accommodation is redundant, illogical, and a failure to remedy my concern. It is well established that I refuse the flu shot based on my sincerely held religious beliefs. It is absolutely my position that we are in a spiritual battle, that I was bought at a price, and that I am the guardian of my body, which has the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. However, my objections and refusal to wear the mask are based on the fact that the policy is a hazard to me, creates a barrier between me and my patients, and is an infection control nightmare and lacks supporting evidence and standards of care. And this is really important today. This part is really important. My objection and protest is not against one single person with whom I have interacted, but with and against entities that seek to enslave us by keeping us fearful, sick, and compliant. I stand firm against chaos, disorder, and confusion, and against decrees that harm me and my patients and my fellow man. Sadly, Susan Eichinger. I thank you, listeners, for caring enough to fight for what's right. This is Susie Eichinger, and until next time, be humble, be curious, be courageous, and you can change the atmosphere.
Shining light into darkness, thank you for tuning in to Nurses Out Loud.